Hello and welcome to a presentation on myopia. This is version 1.005. This is a bonsai upgraded software presentation. This is a Nature article describing the myopia boom. It describes how over 85% of East Asian sort of young people wears glasses, and um, I would argue that currently distance has the same effect on the mind as the eye, and currently perhaps 75% of the entire population have mind myopia. In terms of the mind's eye, when something is close to the mind's eye, we can see it better, and something is far in the mind's eye, we can see it sort of less. Currently, we're undergoing a crisis of psychological myopia. 80% of us are living paycheck to paycheck. 33% of us has $0 for retirement. The average American reads at an 8th grade level. Few people read for leisure, and books as a media product sells much less than the mainstream TV and movies. R and PG-13 genres are the primary genres in films, and the drug addiction crisis is at an all-time high. This is a framework to explain mind myopia. We start out at the sort of entry level, Fortnite beer PG-13. After consuming it a while, we become unsatisfied, so we dip down to a lower tier. Counter-Strike, PUBG, watching our movies, and still not satisfied, we dip down to a lower tier. Dead by Daylight, 7 Days to Die, Whiskey, and NC-17 movies. At the center of this vortex is race car driving, and the deeper it goes, the deeper more chance of psychiatric problems and the degrees of the Freudian id. So if we apply our bandwidth, our mental bandwidth to the um uh to the if we apply our mental bandwidth, uh, yoga efforted inaction is 1 kilobyte per second. Boring mind wandering is 10 kilobytes per second. Low bandwidth pensiveness is 20 kilobytes per second. So, the really heavy stuff are like a nightclub is 200 kilobytes per second. Heavy metal concert is more, and StarCraft is more. Um, uh, the point for the presentation can be seen from a story uh, uh, told by one of Lincoln's lawyer friends during the days when he was a frontier lawyer. When on one of the days when they sort of made the circuit, uh, uh, the lawyer friend saw Lincoln at the end of the day at a hotel room, and Lincoln was staring at the fireplace uh, at the end of the day. So what's interesting when Lincoln when the lawyer friend went upstairs, slept for the night, and came downstairs in the morning, Lincoln was still there, uh, staring at the fireplace. He'd been there the entire night. Um, much of Lincoln's earlier speeches, uh, all of Lincoln's writings and speeches, especially the earlier ones, um, are a product of this sustained pensiveness. This is a moment that defined Lincoln to himself and others. Fast forward to the Civil War, and Lincoln was president. If you look at some of the photos and read some of the firsthand, Lincoln was saying how his hands and feet were cold, and he was under intense strain and pronounced insomnia. While he carried on his normal duties during the day and night, he was doing what he did as a frontier lawyer. he would sort of really think about what was going on, and so this quality, this pensiveness, could be encapsulated by these words: quiet, moderation, and this is what we seem to be moving away from. So the next section is psychological scarcity. As this is a derivative of behavioral economics. This is like this is not the mainstream, but it's an it's an interesting idea. As we're sort of addressing material scarcity, and material scarcity is sort of lowering. Does it have an inverse effect on psychological scarcity? Specifically with regards to this framework, if we can encapsulate physical work as a scarce good, and boredom and labor are scarcer psychological goods, supply of boring inaction is declining. Is the WALL-E scenario of us being on, sort of hover chairs and sort of being wheeled around, and is that inevitable? This is a complex issue, but it's debatable, I think, and certainly psychological scarcity is a debatable subject. One of the means where this is debatable is the improvement of sort of screen size. The TV was once 25% field of view. Now transitions to 100% field of view with VR and cloud glasses. So and the bandwidth keeps increasing. This is one aspect of it, And the other aspect of it is that if you look at these things, they all provide the sort of, they all do not provide depth. The screens are sort of, in some cases, like very close to your eye, and uh, and they do not provide depth. So once it's 100% field of view is like the glasses, it's the equivalent of having this entire field of view like on the, you know, close sort of, like the closest possible to the eye. Uh, this situation of material scarcity, psychological scarcity, has happened before. Uh, if we look at Myopia from Rome, uh, the large, due to the large influx of labor from the Eastern and Gallic wars, a lot of sort of Romans are put out of work. So the challenge for the Roman policymakers is how to sustain the attention of all of these laborers who are out of work. And a Colosseum uh, is sort of better than an opera house. Um, there's also this uh, other factor that unscrupulous people like Caesar sort of enlarge the games for their own personal self-aggrandizement rather than this resource efficiency issue. Um, and and thirdly, is this it acquires a life of its own. This sort of trend acquires a life of its own. Um, and Caesar was uninterested in gladiators and did not participate much in the games. But later policymakers like Augustus and Claudius had to participate in the games, and Claudius much more so because that's what the majority of the public is interested in. So we can examine the vortex relationship between society and policymakers, and the passive force really affected Commodus, sort of, because he was young. He was swept away uh, by this passive force, and he participated in the games as a gladiator. He was totally interested in only the games and nothing else, none of the boring stagecraft stuff. So that's sort of a warning sign. Um, if we combine the neuroplasticity and the addiction framework, we get normal ears versus plastic ears. Boredom effect on our time perception. Uh, uh, it's like cold water. excitement effect on our time perception is like hot water. Uh, Commodus made a Faustian bargain in that he he would live very long in an instant, but he made a lot of his sort of other instances uh, move a lot faster. Um, can we quantify this mind myopia? Uh, if we can measure it, then we can understand and remedy it. And one of the ways to quantify it is via heat maps and eye tracking devices. Uh, Once we quantify this, can we cure myopia like we sort of, or at least accommodate it via eyeglasses? There's sort of, can we alter the screen technology to include depth? All of these technologies are sort of, all of our sort of fields of views are on the sort of zero axis. Can we introduce holograms like Star Wars and Star Trek that has, the holodeck in Star Trek that has much more depth where you can move around like augmented reality, or some measure where we are not where the screen is not totally in front of us. Hypothetical effects of short-termism, presentism, mind myopia: increased consumption, increased orientation towards conflict, less patient, unable to read. So this consumption, we only went from 4 trillion to 7 trillion, and yet we sort of increase our natural consumption by tripling. So also some of the effects, does this mind myopia have an impact on climate change, where we're disconnected from the future self and we can only see 24 hours into the future. The idea of the attention economy is not well studied. The entire market of the attention economy is currently large and will grow. If we combine economic theory and neurology of attention, we can study the attention economy more and produce sort of peer-reviewed articles on that. Also, the identity emergency. Since this vortex deepens our connection to the primordial in. It's more easier for polarization, sound-wise, conflict orientation. The next section is tough debates. Uh, for the policymakers, how would a full schedule affect the policymakers' capability to do what Lincoln did in the Civil War? Right now, due to sort of the right now it's very difficult to have 5 minutes to do what Lincoln did, let alone hours and hours. How would and at a time where the exponential acceleration of the world's problems require pensive analysis, a full schedule that sets the reserve sort of makes this problem worse. And there's also this idea that if all of your friends watch TV for 8 hours, it's difficult not to do the same. Can we ask the analysts to do what sort of do what Lincoln did in terms of being pensive? Narrow long-term focus, for nations, corporations, and organizations, thinkers to complement the doers. So, for the large decisions, can we ask the thinkers to sort of spend a little more time on the large decisions? And this is much needed for the large challenges that we face. What is the proper healthy amount of youth presentism to prevent the youth from being swept away like Commodus was? This is a difficult topic, but for the vortex affects youth much more than it affects sort of older people. Currently, we're undergoing a Star Trek to Star Wars content direction. This trend is encapsulated in the film Birdman. This is a difficult debate and easy to argue incorrectly. But the growing demand for whiskeys and NC-17 content is a problem. There's an endless market demand for the next tier, so that makes the current tier and particularly the previous tiers unsatisfactory. This is a trend for movie ratings over time. At the start, there's G movies and PG movies, but now it's almost all PG-13 and R movies. This Star Trek to Star Wars content direction is seen from the upgrading of gory films like Total Recall, Gladiator, and Logan. Ebert at the time was reviewing Total Recall, said there's a lot of action and violence in this movie. But if you compare it with Logan, this is only a 2.5. Can we quantify this transition? This is particularly pressing because action games are even more violent than action movies, and the world's youth spends longer with the action games than the TV shows and the movies. So there's the economic precedent of inflation that measures the speed of how bad money drives out the good. So we could sort of derive from the inflation to the loud drives out the quiet. And this trend can be seen from the film genres. Previously, it was all documentaries and all dramas. Now it's all action and all anime. So there's a trend of stasis, but currently we're undergoing an acceleration towards the R genre. At what point in this loud driving out the quiet is where the loud completely drives out the boredom and the quiet? Is this the end of reading? Paradoxically, as this trend is happening, the demand for this pensiveness from Lincoln is increasing due to the knowledge workers years and years of quiet studying in science, law, and finance. There's this is from, this quote is from an review of the movie Aliens. Aliens was paced so perfectly that kept the eyes completely glued to the screen. What keeps the eyes completely glued to the screen? And this aspect of sort of completely glued to the screen sort of, it is a contributor to this idea of psychological scarcity. It may be good for the producer, but it's not good for the consumer to have the eyes glued to the screen, and especially this is debatable, but it's especially the use when so where they play games, where the games are paced so perfectly that they kept the eyes glued to the screen. Are we at an inflection point with regards to myopia? If we look at the actions of drug addicts, we are sort of rapidly sort of being sort of pulled towards the vortex. Can we turn the tide somewhat back towards documentary and drama? This presentation is placed in the public domain. It only takes 10 minutes to start your own presentation about my myopia. Rewatching updated presentations provide fresh new perspectives and facts. It's easier to listen to your own presentations than to sort of to listen to other sort of channels. And thousands of presentations will result in complex emergence of new solutions. Thank you very much, and have a good day.